Exposed, the incredible girl who transformed a cold millionaire's heart on one last blind date. Ellen sat at the corner table of the small bistro, the faint scent of espresso and burnt cocoa swirling around her like the clouds of doubt in her mind. She could feel the weight of the evening pressing down on her, squeezing her chest just a little tighter with each passing minute. She had always prioritized her family and education, sacrificing her own dreams for responsibilities that felt too heavy for a 22-year-old. This blind date, set up by her well-meaning art professor, felt like yet another obligation she had to navigate in the uncertain waters of adulthood. When Jacob Harrington strode in, confidence oozing from his very posture, Ellen's stomach twisted itself into knots. He was a self-made millionaire known for consuming everyone around him in his cold ambition. The dim light cast shadows across his sharp features, making him look even more intimidating. As he settled across from her, she felt the duality of hope and fear battling within her. This meeting could either lead to mentorship that she desperately needed to climb out from beneath her student debt, or it could add more turmoil to her already chaotic life. "Tell me about your work," he prompted, his voice flat and devoid of interest. Ellen's heart raced, not from the fear of being judged, but from the sheer desire to share her passion. She spoke about her vision for revitalizing the arts, about how community spaces could ignite creativity in underprivileged neighborhoods. As she animatedly described her ideas, she saw something flicker in Jacob's icy demeanor. The walls he had built began to tremble, and for a fleeting moment, she sensed he recognized something of worth in her. Yet the tension remained, twisting like a vine, as Ellen's mind raced with the implications of this connection. Could she really afford to emotionally invest in someone who appeared so hardened by life? Her insecurities nagged at her, the fear of repeating her mother's sacrifices sat heavy on her shoulders. What if helping Jacob meant losing a piece of herself, her dreams buried under the weight of someone else's shadows? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jacob shifted in his seat, the tension between them crackling like static. Ellen seized the moment to probe deeper, to peel back the layers surrounding his cutthroat persona. She dared to question the price he paid for his success, offering a glimpse of warmth buried beneath his overwhelming ambition. Just as their connection began to scaffold against the stark realities of their lives, the ghost of Jacob's past crashed through the revelation of a betrayal that had cost him everything. Her heart raced, caught between her duty to stay and support him or to protect herself from the disruption he brought into her carefully curated world. Ellen saw the shadows of her upbringing loom larger. Loyalty meant everything, yet she felt the pull of her ambitions calling her forth. Jacob's turmoil weighed heavily on her conscience, so much so that she could barely catch her breath. Would she witness his redemption or become collateral damage in his self-destructive path? As if the universe had conspired against her, news came that she had inherited an art collection from her late great-aunt. For a moment, it felt like a blessing from above, a chance to step into her aspirations and help those in her community. However, it carried with it family obligations that threatened to dissolve her budding connection with Jacob. The clock ticked mercilessly, each second mingling desperation with undeniable yearning. Would she cling to the affection blooming between them or strike out alone toward her aspirations? As the evening darkened, and the unspoken truths loomed over them like storm clouds, Ellen was left questioning everything. Could an emotional entanglement with Jacob lead to bliss or bind her to regret? In that fragile moment, their crossroads lay bare, summoning Ellen to choose between her heart and her future, leaving the narrative in an agonizing pause waiting to see which path she might choose. Ellen stared at Jacob, the tension between them fading into a haunting moment of contemplation. The art collection loomed in her mind, a physical manifestation of her aspirations. It was a legacy she had never anticipated but now felt bound to honor and nurture, a chance to shake off the weight of her past. Or, perhaps, it was yet another chain binding her to the responsibilities and obligations she had grown all too familiar with. Jacob's gaze bore into her, intent and searching, as if he were trying to decipher the unspoken conflict swirling within her. His past, now visible in the cracks of his stoic facade, seemed like an echo of her own struggles. She sensed a strange kinship with him, two souls battling against tides of circumstance. "You talk about the arts as if they can save you," he said, the hint of vulnerability in his tone fetching the gap between them. "Maybe they can," she replied, surprising herself with the passion that surged through her voice. Ellen took a moment to reflect on her words. Could the arts truly act as a lifeboat, pulling her from the swirling sea of expectation? This awaited inheritance was not only an opportunity but a responsibility that weighed heavily on her. What good were her dreams if every brushstroke risked losing Jacob's attention? His steely gaze softened slightly, revealing a man who had wrestled with failure and emerged, albeit scratched and bruised. Ellen felt an uncharacteristic surge of confidence, ignited by their shared silence. "Maybe we both need saving," she confessed, her heart racing. The admission hung in the air, charged with uncertainty. Jacob chuckled dryly. "A millionaire needing saving, it's a new concept. But what about you? What does saving look like?" She paused, grappling with the intricacies of her vision. "It looks like creating something beautiful," she replied, determination fueling her words. "Art has been a lifeline for me. It's not just about the medium, it's about building spaces where people can find their voice, their joy, maybe even their redemption." She recognized the weight of her aspirations colliding with the emotional weight of Jacob's turmoil. In that moment, Ellen considered whether she could weave her own ambitions into a fabric strong enough to encompass both their needs. Could she redirect the energy from her doubts into a force that created real change, for both of them? As their conversation delved deeper, Jacob shared slices of his own story. His eyes flickered with memories of decisions gone awry, fragile threads of vulnerability emerging through the hard edges of his identity. The more he spoke, the more she realized that the cold persona he projected was a mask guarding myriad regrets and dreams that had been buried under layers of ambition. Ellen saw Jacob not just as a millionaire but as someone desperately seeking acceptance, a concept she knew all too well. The realization hit hard. What if helping him meant rediscovering her own sense of self in the process? Could this unlikely alliance lead her to the validation she sought, even as it threatened her ambitions? With each exchanged truth, the divide between them shrank, replaced by a sliver of hope. Ellen felt a strange exhilaration coursing through her, a challenge igniting in her gut. Perhaps Jacob was not a distraction but a catalyst, someone who would fuel her growth if only she dared to risk vulnerability. Yet doubt loomed like a heavy fog. Was it worth becoming entangled in his life? Could she maintain her sense of purpose while navigating his emotional struggles? The clock continued to tick, each second echoing the urgency of her choices. As the evening drew to a close, Ellen felt the weight of decisions pressing against her chest, an obscured path ahead filled with uncertainty and possibility. She could feel the pulse of a newfound resolve whispering to her. Yet the sharp reminder of familial obligations hovered ominously, ready to pull her back toward the familiar, predictable life she had known. Emerging from the bistro, the night air wrapped around her, demanding she consider her next move. Thoughts raced. What if embracing Jacob's complexities could unlock her own potential? Ellen realized that her future would not simply unfold, she would have to carve it out herself. Just as she turned to speak, Jacob's phone buzzed, the sound slicing through their moment, bringing with it not just distraction, but the abrupt reminder of the world outside their storm of feelings. In that instant, the delicate web of their connection felt perilously close to unraveling. Ellen glanced once more at Jacob, unable to shake the notion that the choices she would make next could change everything, not just for her, but for him too. Would she have the courage to step forward, to weave their stories together in a way that forged new paths instead of binding them in obligation? The crossroads had been laid bare, and the future hung in the balance, waiting for her to take the first step. Ellen stepped away from the bustling street, her mind swirling with both possibility and anxiety. The cool night air brushed against her cheeks, awakening her senses. She felt the rhythmic thumping of her heart as she contemplated what stepping beyond the confines of her inherited responsibilities might mean. Would it be an act of liberation or folly? Her eyes were drawn back to Jacob, who stood beneath the soft glow of the streetlight. His silhouette was both imposing and vulnerable. For the first time, she wondered if the allure of the uncertainty he represented was worth surrendering the safety of her past. "Are you okay?" Jacob asked, tilting his head slightly, concern etched in the lines of his face. The way he held himself was such a juxtaposition to the highs and lows he bared moments ago. It revealed a man teetering on the edge of revelation, much like herself. "Just thinking," she replied. In that moment, she realized that she was not simply contemplating the art collection or their potential partnership but rather her own capacity for growth. What if the artistry she mentioned was more than a metaphor? What if it was a real avenue to reshape her life? What if we could create something beautiful together? A flicker of surprise crossed Jacob's features. "Together? You mean you and me?" "Yes," she replied, emboldened by her own clarity. "What if we took this collection, not just as a business venture, but as a medium to explore what's been left unspoken between us? Your past, my future. They're not so different." She saw the gears turn in his mind. Their shared vulnerabilities, masked by a thick layer of hesitation, began crystallizing into something more tangible. She wasn't just offering him a way to redirect his energy, she was inviting him to challenge the boundaries of his own identity. He sighed, the sound heavy with the compressed weight of years spent building shields. "It sounds beautiful when you say it. But do you really think my past holds any value in this?" Ellen met his gaze without flinching. "It's not just about value, Jacob, it's about vision. You're right that we both need saving. But maybe we need to save each other in the process." As she spoke, Ellen felt her confidence surge, an unexpected thread weaving through her narrative. Wasn't her art about resilience? Wasn't it an opportunity to rebuild, layer by layer? The excitement of proposing something unconventional sent tingles down her spine. Jacob stepped closer. "I've wrestled with demons that claw at me still. I don't want to repeat my mistakes, Ellen. The past is a hard habit to shake." His admission was a revelation, triggering a deeper empathy inside her. Perhaps their connection was more layered than she had initially recognized. The desire to peel back those layers intensified within her, intertwining her aspirations with his past struggles that echoed her own. "Neither do I," she said softly. "But growth comes from risking vulnerability. What if we each contribute a piece of ourselves to this project? It could break our chains." He studied her for several moments, the weight of her words settling over them like a thick fog. "Are you ready for what that means?" he asked, challenge mingled with curiosity in his voice. Ellen considered this with a keen awareness of the risks she assumed. Could she bear the consequences if their collaboration unraveled? Yet, the very thought of the art collection serving as a bridge between their fractured pasts intrigued her. Would this partnership reforge her sense of purpose and identity? "I am ready," she finally asserted. "What about you?" With a nod, Jacob's resolve shifted from uncertainty to a flicker of something warmer. But his hesitation still lingered, whispering beneath the surface, hinting at a struggle that neither of them could fully understand yet. Ellen's heart raced as she welcomed the idea of venturing into uncharted territories, her next steps teetering between professional ambition and personal connection. Yet, an echo of her family's expectations clawed at her thoughts, reminding her of the weight she bore. Could she halt her spiraling doubts to embrace what intertwined destinies might lay ahead? In the midst of their moment, a passing car honked, jolting her from contemplation. The imposition of reality threatened to sever the delicate thread of connection they had begun to weave. Ellen glanced at Jacob, who wore an expression hallowed by possibility. The next chapter of her life awaited, a canvas filled with countless questions. Would she dare to take the leap into co-authorship of their lives? As she stepped closer to that precipice, she caught Jacob's eye, sensing a fragile truce in the night air. What would they create together if both had the courage to confront their pasts and redefine their futures? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be unveiled. The moment that could redefine their trajectories hovered, and she faced him with resolve. Soon, they would find out who truly needed to be saved, and what it really meant to build something beautiful. Ellen took a deep breath, the air thick with expectancy and the distant sounds of city life pulsating like a heartbeat. The uncertainty that once loomed felt different now, almost exhilarating. This was a shared venture with the potential to redefine them both, yet there was a persistent whisper in her mind urging caution. Was she truly ready to dismantle the facade she had painstakingly constructed? "Then let us do this," Jacob said with unexpected resolve, his voice firm yet laced with an edge of vulnerability. Ellen saw a glimmer of determination in his eyes that mirrored her own, a flicker of hope amid the chaos of their individual pasts. Over the next few weeks, Ellen poured herself into preparations. The art collection became a sanctuary, a way to channel her creativity while intricately interweaving her narrative with Jacob's. As she sorted through her family's legacy of art, she unearthed pieces that resonated deeply with her, works that spoke of struggle, resilience, and the beauty that arises from imperfection. Each brushstroke reminded her that art, much like life, is composed of layers, revealing the rawness beneath the surface. However, familiarity with her past bore the weight of expectation. Moments isolated her in self-doubt. What if she was merely repeating her family's mistakes? What if her endeavor with Jacob led to more than just artistic failure? She wrestled with the implications of transforming inherited responsibilities into something that belonged to her. This was no longer about supplies or canvases, it was about identity. As her resolve strengthened, she noticed Jacob's transformation as well. His past, once a heavy burden, began to shift, revealing glimpses of a man who was willing to face the shadows he had long avoided. They spent nights discussing themes for the collection, debating the power of vulnerability in art, and the potent magic that could arise from each offering they provided. Ellen sensed a transformation occurring in Jacob, flickers of a man who longed to break free from the chains of self-doubt, who sought salvation not just for himself but also for the connection he sought with her. Yet there were moments of tension. One evening, as they reviewed the sketches he had created, Ellen felt a wave of frustration wash over her. His reluctance to fully embrace his past surfaced as a barrier. "You can't keep holding back, Jacob," she snapped, frustration edging her voice. "Your art needs to speak your truth. It can't carry only the polished version you present to the world." He paused, the air between them thickening. "And what if my truth is not something I'm proud of?" he replied, defensively. "There's beauty in imperfection," she countered, her voice softer now, seeking to bridge their conflict. "Each of us is a mosaic of our experiences. You need to embrace yours. It might be the very thing that connects us with others. This project isn't just about the art, it's about revealing ourselves." His eyes softened as he absorbed her words. She understood that Ella could confront her family's legacy, so why couldn't Jacob confront his? A sense of urgency built within her as she realized her growth wasn't just about pursuing a career in fine art. It was about fighting for authenticity to break the cycle of fear that shrouded them both. With renewed intention, Ellen rolled up her sleeves and decided to tackle the logistics of the collection's launch. Setting an exhibition date brought waves of excitement and anxiety. This was no longer a mere aspiration, the countdown clock had started, igniting a fire within her. Yet, as the date loomed, worries resurfaced. Would they be ready? Would they create something worthy of their journey? In the midst of the frenzy, a stark revelation struck her deeply. The stakes were infinitely personal now. Was she doing this for recognition, validation, or something more profound? It was a dawning realization that forced her to examine her motivations. The night before the exhibition, Ellen stood before a canvas, her palms stained with paint. Memories flooded her. Countless instances where she had hidden behind her family's shadow, feeling the insignificance creep in. But in this moment, a surge of determination pushed her forward. She stepped away from merely being the daughter of legacy and had begun constructing her own. Looking up, she caught a glimpse of Jacob, seated with his sketches scattered around him, a look of deep contemplation etched across his face. Both of them were on the precipice of transformation. "Ready for tomorrow?" she asked, masking her own uncertainties with a brave face. He looked up, a flicker of excitement breaking the tension. Ready to reveal everything. But what lay beyond their shared venture continued to loom like an uncharted sea, deep and turbulent with potential peril. Ellen's heart thudded in time with the ticking clock of their impending exhibition. Could they truly expose the essence of their vulnerabilities before the world? Would it be enough to save them both? As she stood there, a gust of wind rustled the pages of Jacob's sketches, and she felt the fabric of their intertwined destinies shift. They were not just co-creators, they were about to unveil the collective scars of their lives, a beautiful chaos wrought from the depths of their shared experiences. In that moment of clarity, a new understanding dawned. There would be no more hiding. As the hour approached, the question loomed larger than any doubt: how would they face the ultimate truth, together? And that truth was just waiting to be unveiled. Ellen awoke to the soft glow of dawn breaking through her window, casting a warm light across the scattered remnants of last night's frenzied preparations. Her stomach churned with a mix of excitement and anxiety, but there was a whisper of determination buried beneath the unease. It was the day of their exhibition, a moment she had both long awaited and dreadfully feared. As she sipped her coffee, the jarring contrast between her serene morning routine and the chaos of the exhibition loomed in her mind, uniting her racing thoughts. She quickly scrolled through her notebook, fine-tuning last-minute details, her pulse thrumming in time with her heart, a constant reminder of the challenge ahead. Yet, each checklist item gave her a sense of control, a momentary distraction from the raw vulnerability she knew would greet her. Jacob had been quiet in their lead-up to the event. His intense focus fluctuated between the sketches he'd worked on and the emotional weight of their endeavor. Ellen felt a mix of admiration and frustration. Did he truly understand the stakes they were tampering with? She glanced over at him, seated at the kitchen table, his brow furrowed in concentration as he layered ink on paper, seemingly lost in thought. "Jacob," she broke the silence, "do you ever worry about how people will perceive our work? What if they don't see what we fought so hard to create?" He looked up, a peculiar mix of surprise and vulnerability reflected in his eyes. "Every single day," he admitted. "It's terrifying, isn't it? But," he hesitated, "it's also liberating. I think this could be the moment where we finally step into who we really are." The implication of his words hung in the air. They were on the brink of revealing not just their art, but their very selves, stripped bare and open to judgment. Ellen clenched her jaw. She wouldn't back down. Not now. Not ever again. As they arrived at the venue, Ellen felt the atmosphere shift. It buzzed with energy and tension akin to the calm before a storm. Gallery lights flickered to life, illuminating walls ready to showcase their creation. Each artwork told a story, a narrative of struggles, triumphs, and the dichotomy of beauty intertwined with despair. Her gaze flicked to Jacob, watching as he glided through the space, quietly absorbing the environment. She saw at the moment he stepped into the light as a co-creator, not merely hiding behind her efforts. The hours leading up to the exhibition were a haze of activity, anxiety simmering just below the surface. Ellen moved with purpose, adjusting artworks, welcoming attendees, engaged in conversations that felt both thrilling and abstract. Each exchange intensified her resolve to push past the barriers that held her captive for so long. When the doors finally opened to the public, Ellen stood at the entrance, watching as people streamed in. Their murmurs, laughter, and footsteps blended into an anxious soundtrack that reverberated through her chest. Was it too much? Would they comprehend the emotions woven into their pieces? As the first visitors approached, she felt her breath hitch. One patron lingered before a painting she had created, a haunting representation of a family tree twisted by secrets and disappointments. The observer scrutinized it, tilting her head as if trying to unlock its meaning. Ellen felt raw, the heartbeat of her journey echoing in her ears. Would she be able to explain the intricate layers that led her to this moment? Jacob joined her side, and they stood in solidarity, facing the chaos unfolding before them. The whispers from the crowd grew louder, each comment either piercing or uplifting. The weight of it all began to swell inside her. "I think they're seeing us, Ellen," he murmured, a glint of hope in his voice. "No," she replied, biting her lip. "We've barely scratched the surface. This is just the beginning." The thought propelled her forward, entwining her aspirations with vulnerability. Amid a sea of strangers, she realized that she was not just revealing her art but ultimately unearthing her soul, brick by brick. Yet, as she met the gaze of an inquisitive visitor, doubts crept in. The fear of being judged, of falling short of expectations, loomed heavily. Who was she to feel entitled to this moment? But a counter-narrative emerged. She had every right. Faces from her past critics, family, herself faded from her consciousness. This was her era of authenticity, one she would fiercely defend. As comments filtered through the crowd, Ellen felt their spirits intertwine with hers, igniting a tenacity she hadn't fully grasped before. But just as the overwhelming promise of connection swept through her, a voice silenced it. An unexpected visitor, an influential critic she had long admired yet feared, stepped through the gallery door. Ellen's heart raced, the room suddenly feeling too small a spotlight thrust upon her. Would their art withstand his scrutiny? Would they find validation in this process, or would it all come crashing down? Ellen's breath caught in her throat. The moment of truth was here. Would this revelation spark the connection they long sought, or lead to an irrevocable fracture? The answer lingered heavily in the air, waiting for them to confront it. Ellen's heart banged against her ribcage, an insistent reminder that she was alive at this pivotal moment. She caught sight of the critic, his gaze, sharp and analytical, slicing through her confidence. Would her journey of self-expression stutter at this crucial juncture? As patrons continued to filter in, murmurs of their excitement buzzed through the air. But for Ellen, the images of her work began to blur. The vivid colors of her intentions faded into a grayscale of anxiety. She had invested so much, each brushstroke a piece of her psyche laid bare, yet now it threatened to unravel before a scrutinizing audience. "Don't let him intimidate you," Jacob whispered, reading her internal turmoil like an open book. Their eyes met, and he emanated an encouraging warmth. "They're here because they are curious about what we have to say. But what if they don't want to hear it?" The words escaped her lips before she could bite them back, revealing her gnawing self-doubt. Jacob leaned closer, his intensity almost palpable. "We didn't create these pieces for validation, we did it to express ourselves. Focus on that." The sound of approaching footsteps dragged her back to reality. A group of patrons stood in front of her painting, discussing the imagery with passionate conviction. Ellen wrestled with the impulse to hide in the shadows. Instead, she took a hesitant step forward, determined to confront her fears. "Can I share what inspired this piece?" She found herself speaking, her voice trembling slightly, yet carrying an urgency that surprised her. The group looked at her, intrigued. As she began to unfold the narrative behind her work, a sense of liberation washed over her. Each word seemed to peel back the layers of fear, allowing her authenticity to spill forth. She spoke of her family history, the truths buried beneath the surface, the unspoken connections that shaped who she was. The audience listened, captivated. This was a part of herself she had shielded for too long, yet in sharing, she felt the cracks of her vulnerability transform into a resilience. Ellen caught the critic's gaze as he studied her with unexpected intensity. She wanted to hold his scrutiny at bay but felt an odd sense of validation as he remained silent. The very act of revealing her truth seemed to discourage judgment, if only for this fleeting moment. When she finished, an unexpected wave of applause erupted. The patrons were drawn together by emotions that transcended mere observation. "And that's what this is about," Ellen concluded, surprising herself at how strong her voice remained. "This is not only art, it's our lives, our stories." As she stepped back, breathless and filled with a sense of accomplishment, she noticed the critic's expression flicker. The shadows of cynicism began to fade, yielding to curiosity. Perhaps she'd ignited a shift within him, or maybe it was their shared connection that had pierced his armor. The evening unraveled with newfound energy. Ellen embraced each conversation as they flowed from shared experiences to laughter. Still, the critic loomed in her mind, challenging her sense of triumph. What if he recognized her journey only to dismiss it? The thoughts intruded, but she steadied her resolve. Then, amidst the conversations, she received a nudge from Jacob. "He's coming over," he whispered, the excitement simmering in his voice blending with a hint of dread. Their eyes met, and Ellen's pulse quickened. This was the crossroads, a chance for validation or despair. Could she maintain the grounded confidence she felt moments ago, or would this establish a rift within herself, reopening wounds she had only just begun to heal? Now or never, she told herself as her heart raced. The moment was upon her, shaping into a confrontation that could determine not just the future of their artwork, but the trajectory of her very essence. Would the critic's opinion induce collapse, or would it birth the validation she craved? The air crackled with potential, and Ellen braced herself for the turning point that lay ahead. With a deep breath, she prepared to embrace either outcome, knowing this pivotal moment would ultimately define not only her work but her identity. Ellen's breath hitched as the critic approached, the weight of his presence pressing against her like a storm cloud. This was not merely an encounter, it was a reckoning. As he drew nearer, every doubt she had accumulated over the years surged forth with the force of a tidal wave. Would her words hold any power against his piercing scrutiny? "Your piece," he began, his voice steady but tinged with deliberation, brought forth a raw vulnerability. "Tell me, did you set out to invoke such a response?" Caught off guard, Ellen hesitated. She had rehearsed a multitude of scenarios in her mind, but this inquiry felt different, like an unveiled invitation rather than a challenge. "I wanted to connect," she replied, her voice steadier than she expected. "I wanted to give life to my experiences, to share the struggles of my past and how they shaped me. Maybe even inspire others." He studied her, his expression inscrutable. Ellen fought the instinct to flee, forcing herself to embrace this moment. For the first time, she felt the power of her own narrative, weighing her words against the backdrop of her life. She realized she was no longer standing before a critic, but rather an audience ready for revelation. What if they don't understand? The second question arrived like a knife, slicing through her newfound confidence. Surrendering to self-doubt felt like a regression she couldn't afford. Yet, it beckoned relentlessly. "They might not," she responded, her voice gaining momentum. "But that's not my concern. I can't force others to feel something they aren't prepared for. What matters is that I feel it. That I own my truth." At this, the critic raised an eyebrow, a flicker of appreciation. Maybe. But Ellen knew she must remain vigilant. Vulnerability was both her shield and her exposed flesh in this dance. She had to go further, to probe deeper. "What about the perfectionism you exhibit in your work? Isn't it all a facade, an attempt to hide the imperfections of your past?" His words were sharper than she anticipated, seeking an unguarded wound. And just like that, her internal battle shifted. Ellen felt the intensity of his skepticism, and yet, it ignited a fire within her. Swallowing hard, she responded, "Perhaps. But embracing imperfections allows me to create something new. I've spent too long trying to fit my life into neat boxes. Now, I choose to be messy, I choose to be real. My art reflects that, the struggles intertwined with the beauty." The critic regarded her thoughtfully, his previous facade of indifference started to crack. For a brief moment, Ellen sensed a shift in the atmosphere around them, as if her words had roots extending beyond the canvas and into the hearts of everyone present. Could art truly have the power to reach souls, even from behind the walls of cynicism? Jacob watched from a distance, a supportive gleam in his eyes. Ellen exchanged a glance with him, and her determination surged. She had dug deep within herself and unearthed truths she had buried alongside her fears. In that pivotal second, the question shifted from how the critic would ultimately judge her work, to how she would judge herself. Was she here to seek his approval or to claim her own worth? Her past did not define her, nor did anyone else's perception. She owed it to herself to break free from that oppressive cycle. As they stood in the thick tension of the moment, the critic seemed to soften, drawing a breath that hung in the air like an apology for skepticism. "You've convinced me that art is indeed a form of courage," he admitted slowly, almost reluctantly. "But what will you do with that courage next?" An unexpected thrill coursed through Ellen. The question challenged her vision, stirring within her the embers of possibility. She thought of the next step she could take: a gallery, perhaps a solo exhibition, unveiling more than just her art, but herself as well. As her resolve crystallized, she met the critic's gaze with newfound determination. This moment, this exchange, had transformed something within her. And yet, as she championed an emerging sense of purpose, a whisper of fear coiled around her heart. Was she truly ready to step fully into this new identity? Was the world prepared for what she had yet to reveal? The air was electric with promise, and she knew this was just the cusp of something monumental. Ellen shivered with anticipation and trepidation as she pondered what lay ahead. Would she summon the courage to dive deeper into her own artistry? The time to confront her future was now, and she steeled herself to embrace whatever came next. The journey of self-discovery had only just begun. Ellen stepped away from the critic, a newfound clarity pulsating through her veins. The exchange had unearthed not just her resolve but a reconsideration of how she would approach her art and her life. As she wandered away from the crowd, the air felt charged with potential, each breath a reminder of the commitment she had made to herself. The noise of the gathering dimmed as she moved toward a quiet corner. She needed space to think, to delve into the implications of the critic's words. What did courage look like for her? How could she transform the spark ignited in that encounter into something tangible? With an urgency that surprised her, she pulled out her phone and opened a blank document, the screen illuminated in the dusk. Should she write about that moment? Capture the rawness of the exchange? Or should she consider the broader strokes of her journey, the canvas needing not just detail but depth? She felt her heart race. The thought of a solo exhibition consumed her, showcasing not just her artwork, but her story in its entirety. The idea was liberating yet terrifying. The prospect of standing alone in a gallery, opening herself to vulnerability, felt like staring down a vast abyss. But the deeper truth was, perhaps that was precisely what she needed, a leap into the unknown. Ellen's fingers danced across the screen, outlining ideas and keywords, weaving snippets of her past into paragraphs. She wrote of the turmoil that had inspired her most poignant pieces, the moments of darkness from which she had emerged wounded yet stronger. The emotions surged through her, transforming as she typed. Fear was giving way to clarity, hesitation to determination. Words flowed from her mind like a torrent, and with each keystroke, she dared to confront her own imperfections. This was her window into vulnerability, a radical rejection of any facade. Painting her truth with honesty became exhilarating, liberating her from the confines of self-doubt that had plagued her art for so long. As she crafted her narrative, Ellen recalled conversations she had avoided, intimacies she had shelved to protect herself from hurt. But had those very shields not also stunted her growth? She realized she needed to face those fears head-on. This was not merely about painting, this was a reclamation of her identity. Completing the initial draft ignited a flurry of emotions, and elation tinged with apprehension. Ellen pondered her next steps. What would viewers think? Would they perceive her intentions correctly? Yet, a counter to the looming worry emerged, the thought of connection. In revealing her truth, she could inspire others to embrace their complexities, their messiness. Only then could art transcend its medium. It became a vessel for shared experience, a bridge between disparate lives. Each brushstroke, a testament to resilience, each encounter, a merciful understanding of mutual struggle. Gazing at the final words on her phone, she felt a wave of exhilaration washing over her. Finally, she could take ownership of her narrative and present it authentically. But the deeper question loomed beneath the surface: had she truly captured the essence of her emotional journey? She considered her next move a bold leap into the world of publicity. To locate a gallery, secure a date, and confront the audience would be challenges testing her like never before. Could she withstand potential criticism? The stakes were mounting. Taking a deep breath, Ellen closed her eyes to visualize her audience, the faces that would witness the unfolding of her heart on canvas. Their gazes would be embodiments of myriad interpretations, reflections of the vulnerabilities she dared to render visible. As she prepared to venture back into the crowd, Ellen felt fire in her spirit. The critic's question lingered: but what will you do with that courage next? She might not have a clear answer yet, but one thing was certain: there was no turning back. The time had come for her to transform her fears into her greatest triumph. Setting her phone down, she took a step forward into the thrumming heart of the gathering. There was unfinished business on the horizon, and with it, the exhilarating possibility of transformation awaited. Would she brave the impending storm, or would she let it silence her once more? The challenge loomed large as she contemplated the task ahead, unveiling her truth, once and for all. Ellen re-entered the crowd, her pulse steadying as determination settled in her bones. As she navigated through the throng, she felt uplifted, buoyed by the intoxicating possibility of what lay ahead. Every face was a reminder those individuals were potential witnesses to her transformation, her rebirth as an artist. Still, they represented a daunting challenge, and Ellen thrilled at the thought. Suddenly, her breath hitched. A reminder of the critic's question, a question that demanded action, commitment, a leap into the unknown. Would she risk exposing her heart, her vulnerabilities to this unknown audience? She spotted a cluster of fellow artists engrossed in conversation, circling around a seasoned gallery owner prominently displaying a name tag. Ellen hesitated, anxiety creeping into her chest like an insistent whisper. What if she faltered? What if her art was not enough? Gathering her strength, she approached, the chatter fading as she neared. These were the gatekeepers to the very world she sought to burst into. Would they see her luminously or dismissively? Igniting her inner resolve, Ellen introduced herself and extended her hand, every nerve ending ablaze with uncertainty. "Hi, I'm Ellen Foster," she stated, her voice unexpectedly firm. "I'm an artist, and I'd like to discuss the possibility of a solo exhibition." The gallery owner turned, one eyebrow raised with curiosity. "A solo exhibition, you say?" "Ambitious," he replied, his tone a mix of intrigue and skepticism. "Tell me, what is your story?" That singular question struck Ellen like a lightning bolt, demanding immediate clarity. The moment hung suspended in the air. She felt an instinctive urge to retreat, to shield herself behind the layers of her art. But something shifted within her, the vulnerability that had once terrified her now radiated strength. "I've been through a lot: loss, love, and everything in between. My journey has shaped my art. Each piece represents a chapter I've lived, a moment I've conquered." Her words felt like paint splattering against canvas, bold strokes revealing her truth. The gallery owner listened intently, nodding slowly as he absorbed her words. "And what compels you to share this vulnerability through your art?" Ellen faltered, caught in the depth of her own thoughts. Why did she want to share? It was about more than just showcasing her talent, it was a call to others to embrace their imperfections as well. Because in vulnerability lies strength. "I want my work to resonate with others, to lift them from their struggles," she said, voice steadier. A flicker of something akin to admiration crossed his face. Touching. But a gallery isn't merely a place for sentiment. "It's a business, Ellen, and I need to see not only your story but your art as well." As he spoke, Ellen's mind raced. This was a doorway, but it was also a test, a challenge she could not afford to fail. If she were to take this leap, she needed more than mere passion, she needed a solid body of work, an exhibition that could withstand scrutiny. "Would you be willing to see my work? I have pieces that I believe convey my journey." "Send me your portfolio," he replied, leaning back. "I'll give it a look." Ellen left the conversation electrified, her heart pounding with a whirlwind of adrenaline and apprehension. She had embarked, daring to voice her ambitions, risking rejection. But with each step, she felt momentum building, a bridge connecting her art to the possibilities of transformation. Yet the reality settled onto her shoulders like a heavy blanket. She had to deliver. Would her work reflect the rawness of her experiences? There was no more hiding in comfort. This challenge was hers to bear, and she needed the time and focus to transform sketches and ideas into art worthy of her narrative. A plan crystallized in her mind: dedicate every moment to her art, infusing it with honesty and integrity. Commissioning herself to reveal those depths, the fear of judgment had to dissolve into the fervor for connection. And as her resolve hardened, Ellen recognized the true essence of her endeavor. It would not merely be about her, but the countless untold stories she would evoke in others. This was a chance to illuminate the complexities of life, the beauty nestled within heartache. With renewed determination surging inside her, Ellen wrestled with the exhilarating challenge that awaited, finding her artistic voice while pushing against the weight of every conceivable doubt. Would she survive this undertaking? The deadline loomed like an approaching storm, its dark tendrils wrapped around her budding ambition. As she gathered her belongings and exited the gathering, Ellen felt an anticipation brew inside, simmering just below the surface. What revelations awaited her in the darkroom of her creative spirit? The canvas awaited her brush, the blank spaces yearning for the vividness of her truth. But first, she needed to confront her own hidden fears. The moment of creation approached, and with it, the ultimate test of transformation loomed. Would she emerge unscathed, or would her fears threaten to cloud her vision yet again? Ellen awoke early, the sunlight streaming fraudulently through her window, igniting a fire of resolve within her. Today was not just any day, it would lay the foundation for her appointment with destiny, a moment to capture and articulate the complex tapestry of her life through her art. The clock ticked steadily, but unlike past mornings filled with anxiety, she felt a quiet strength building within her. Months prior, she had been a timid artist, defined largely by the perceptions of others, enveloped in a cocoon of familial obligations. Now, she was ready to unfurl and confront her fears. The critic's challenge had initiated a metamorphosis. Each word he spoke reverberated through her being, compelling her to step into the light. She couldn't shy away any longer. Kicking the covers aside, Ellen pulled herself from bed and glanced at the sketches cluttering her room. They were more than ideas, they were facets of her soul, laying bare the struggles and epiphanies of her journey. The once distant dreams of the solo exhibition bloomed vividly in her mind. No longer a lingering thought, it was now a palpable goal. The day unfurled into a frenzy of activity. Ellen diligently sifted through her body of work, seeking pieces that resonated with the truth of her journey, art that shouted her story, longing to be heard. Each brushstroke became an assertion, a claim on her identity, and with every embellishment of color, she battled the shadows of doubt that had once held her captive. She poured herself into a canvas that symbolized her family's legacy, rich in history but fraught with unseen burdens. And as she layered paint, Ellen confessed the impact of those ancestral ties on her path. Each impassioned stroke seemed to cleanse her spirit. This was her reclamation, a designated canvas where she could transform familial expectation into personal triumph. As she stepped back, surveying her labor, Ellen's heart surged with pride. She envisioned the gallery filled with eager faces absorbing her journey through her work. This was not merely a showcase but a testimony to her evolution, a celebration of her resilience. By revealing her imperfection, she was kindling the potential for growth in everyone who dared to engage. Determined, she uploaded her portfolio, including carefully selected works with powerful narratives, and sent it off to the gallery in hopes of a solo exhibition. As she hit send, a buzz of anxiety surged through her. The risk was undeniable. What if the gallery owner rejected her vision? Yet amidst her anxiety, a flicker of resolve ignited. She had transformed from an artist seeking validation to one who demanded recognition on her terms. In the coming days, as the calendar turned, Ellen immersed herself in the constructive chaos of preparing for her exhibition. She reached out to local artists for support, seeking to weave their unique narratives into the fabric of her work. Each conversation bolstered her confidence. The purpose transcended mere aesthetics. It became an act of connection and healing. When the day dawned for the exhibition, Ellen stood before the gallery space, breathless. She took a moment, inhaling the refreshing scent of the paint, her vulnerability simmering just beneath the surface. It was time to embrace the collection she had so passionately cultivated and live in her truth. As patrons flowed through the space, Ellen's initial nerves dissolved. Conversations ignited around her pieces, genuine curiosity and admiration convincing her that her risk had transformed into something worthwhile. She was met with warmth and acknowledgement, the tension of her past experiences melding into applause and encouragement rather than judgment. The critic, among the crowd, emerged to engage her in conversation. Ellen's heart pounded as he approached, but the sense of trepidation was now tinged with excitement. He shared his reflections on her work, commending her bravery in articulating her truth. Art like yours forces the audience to confront their own struggles. You've stepped into the light. A wave of relief washed over her. This was validation, yet it felt deeper than she anticipated. While she had braced herself for the possibility of critique, she received something far more substantial: acknowledgement of her journey, insight into her soul's labor. The connection she had yearned for had crystallized in his words. Ellen's pulse quickened as the evening unfolded into laughter and shared stories, a tapestry of lives interwoven through art. In weaving tales, she felt a sense of fulfillment surging through. The hesitations of her past had faded, she confronted her fears head-on and emerged into the clarity of self-acknowledgement. The successes she envisioned had begun materializing, but they were about more than achieving a goal, they were confirmations of her identity. In this catalytic moment, Ellen recognized that she had not only created an exhibition. She had embarked on a transformative journey, stitching together her past, present, and future into a cohesive narrative that ignited her spirit. With renewed confidence, she smiled, no longer tethered to the suffocating expectations of the past. Her heart thrummed with the realization that she was not just an artist, but a storyteller, a purveyor of resilience and beauty amid imperfection. Ellen had stepped fully into her power, and as the crowd buzzed around her, she knew this was only the beginning. Embrace your own journey. Step into your light, and see what awaits beyond the shadows of self-doubt and fear. If you believe in the transformative power of stories, don't wait another moment. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss out on more emotional journeys. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and support stories that inspire. Comment your reactions and share your theories about this incredible transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of embracing vulnerability. Your engagement makes a difference.